going on, everybody? I'm Jason, and this is Tennessee Mountain Homestead. Today I'm going to be working on my 1983 John Deere 214. I'm going to be changing out the wheel bearings, and I'm going to be beefing up the tie rod and drag link joints. Stay tuned. I'm going to start by taking off the tires, and mine happen to have this bolt in the spindle. Some of them might have an E-clip, and some of them could have a snap ring. I'm gonna go ahead and get these wheels and tires up on a sturdy surface, and we need to get the old bearings out. Now, I've done this before, and I kind of used just any long item like a chisel or a punch or something. And I'm gonna go for the outer race of the bearing, which is here, but from the other side, inside the rim. And I felt it come out. Got a bunch of grease inside there. Just like that, they're out. And I've already, I went on eBay and I found some OEM John Deere replacement bearings, because the last time I did this, I went on eBay also and I got just some ones that were brand new, probably Chinese made, and they didn't fit. I ended up thinking that it was just gonna be a tight fit. I put them in there, I put a big piece of threaded rod, some big washers, and tried to clamp them in there. And they went in, but they wouldn't turn after, and they actually flared out the steel of the rim, and that rim was essentially junk after that because it flared it out so much. And that's why I went with OEM John Deere. Now, these things are getting scarce and they're getting expensive. I think each one of these was like $17.95, but I think it'll be worth it. And also, these new bearings are sealed, where the ones I just popped out were original, I believe, because they came out of old tractors and they've all been like this. But there's no seal on the, as I was saying before I hit the camera with the tire, these old bearings that came out of here, first of all, you can see how much play is in them. Like, that inner race just moves all around. They're pretty much worn out, but they don't have, you see, these are the brand new ones. I just took it out of the box, and it was actually inside plastic and everything, and it was taped, made in Japan. So you know these are probably old, but these have a rubber seal on both sides. I'm not gonna have to, the reason these things are so greasy is because after I put them in, knowing that they were out of another tractor, that they were already worn, they were already old, they didn't have these seals on the inside, I just went ahead and put some grease and some Lucas oil stabilizer mix inside, so that way that stuff would flow into the bearing as I was driving around. Well, that worked out pretty good, I guess, but these new ones, I'm not gonna open these up. They feel like they're definitely just fine. They've got grease in them from factory, and I'm gonna leave them like that. I'm gonna clean out the grease that's inside this rim before I put them in and go with that. So I'm gonna go ahead and knock out the second one. See you in a minute. All right, just cleaning out this grease that doesn't need to be in there. Oh. So I'm just pretty much just gonna pull an oversized old shirt or rag through it. And that'll be good enough. I'll wipe a little more off. Now that I've got my old bearings out, I went ahead and cleaned this rim because it was full of crud, and all that old Lucas and grease I had in there, it was leaking out past the bearings and mixed it with mud. Anyways, I've got my new bearings. What I'm gonna do, I took a large impact socket or anything round that'll fit on the outer race is what you're looking for. You don't want to bang on the middle of this with a hammer. Outer race. So I'm going to set that in there. I can already feel it's going to be a nice fit. And just gonna switch to a regular hammer. Looks like we're seated. And remember, you want to stay on the outer race, otherwise you're going to mess your bearing up. Bearing still spins free. Everything looks good, it's seated. I'm going to do the other side. Now I could have done the all thread method and pressed them in with nuts and washers, but it's not that tight of a fit. So I'm going to go this route. We're all the way seated. That feels so much better. Those are so much tighter than them old ones. So that's it. We've got the bearings in our rims. I'm gonna do the other side, and then we're gonna switch gears and get into the steering. Now that the bearings have been replaced in those wheels and tires, that was a fairly straightforward process. I just wanted to show that we did that and how to do that. So the next thing I want to do on this tractor is beef up the tie rod for the steering and the drag link for the steering. Now, if you're watching this and you have a 200 series that you use to cut your grass or whatever, then the stock tie rod and ball joints and all that stuff are probably fine, and if it'd be a direct replacement to just get some new ones off eBay or whatever. However, this is my mud mower. This thing sees a lot more speed. It sees a lot more obstacles. I drive this thing over rocks. I run the wheels and tires into solid objects all the time, like big rocks and obstacles. So I want to make this thing stronger. A couple months ago, we were out trail riding, and I already had one of the stock ball joints break right off of the steering gearbox. Sorry about the background noise, guys. Stefan's outside, my son. He's cutting up wood for a chicken coop he's building. Anyway, I'm going to beef this thing up with these Heim joints. I got these from eBay. These are actually chromoly. I'll put the link in the description. The website or the people who sell these have two different kinds. They've got economy ones, which I believe are just mild steel, and these claim to be chromoly. So I paid a little bit more for these, but they're right and left hand thread, just like this tie rod and this drag link are going to be. It's going to be right and left hand thread. I also think that it's 1/2 inch 20 thread. So that's what I got here. This is 1/2 inch 20 on the threads. You want to watch out for that when you're buying your stuff. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and get this stuff unscrewed, get the tie rods out of here and up on the workbench. All right, so to get these tie rod ends off, it's a 3/4 inch. On the bottom is the nut, and the top of the ball joint happens to be 5/8. So you definitely want to hold the top while you unscrew the bottom. All right, now that we've got the jam nuts off of it, you just take it right out. All right, it's the same deal for the drag link. You got 5/8 to hold the stud, 3/4 to get off the jam nut. Well, now that we've got our drag link and tie rod up here on the bench, I just want to kind of get an initial look at it to see. And I think we're going to be close. We're going to be right in the same ballpark. So the center line of that stud that comes off of this tie rod end is lined up with the center of my Heim joint, and the end of the Heim joint is still well within the threads. So there's my jam nut right here, and I still have another 3/8 maybe of thread, and the end of my Heim joint comes to about halfway in that jam nut. So I'll be able to run this back, take this off, and put this on. But I want to put it in the same exact spot because I did not have any issues with alignment or anything like that. It was good how it was, just like it's set. So I don't want to really alter that. If anything, maybe some toe in, but I don't have a set of blank rims that I can put angle iron on and try to do a redneck alignment. So I'm gonna leave it as is. So that's looking good. And this should be the same story here with the drag link. All right guys, there's a little indentation, a flat spot in the tie rod end, and that's 5/8. So let me go ahead and see. I'm not sure if this is a right or left hand thread. We're gonna have to call the big guns out. Looks like this one's right hand thread. So we got that one busted loose. Let's do the other side. So this one should be left hand thread. Well, there was a little bit of oversight on my part. So going into this, I just assumed that one side of this was going to be left hand thread and the other side was going to be right hand thread. So that's how I bought my stuff. But it's not the case. Both sides of this is right hand. Thankfully, I had enough stuff from the past, all kinds of Heim joints I bought for other projects. I have enough right hand thread stuff that I have enough to do the whole project. So I've got right hand threads on both sides of this tie rod. Now we're going to look and see if this is like that or not. I don't know if that's both right or if one's left and one's right. We're gonna find out right now. All right, so everything on the tie rod and the drag link are right hand thread. So in case you're planning on upgrading your tractor to Heim joints or even brand new stuff, you're gonna want everything to be right hand thread. Now, the next step we're gonna do is these are just on there finger tight. I just need to take these off and put the old stuff back on. And I need to get a measurement center to center so I can put these in the same spot. You know, real quick, I was just sitting here messing with this and I was thinking about it. The confusion of left and right hand threads stems all the way back to like eBay, like a year and a half ago when I first started working on this thing and I wanted to get some new ball joints for it, some new tie rod ends. Well, I went on eBay and typed in, you know, John Deere 200 series, 212 or whatever into the search bar, tie rod ends. And it says that they give you the ones that are extra heavy duty, you know, heavy duty. And it also said left and right hand thread. And they sent them out like that. Well, I went to put them on the tractor and it just, one of them wouldn't thread on. Well, that explains it. So that's where some of the confusion came from to begin with. So I've always thought that this was left and right hand threaded. Well, we're finding out together today that it's all right hand thread. So just like to throw that in there in case you're shopping on eBay. Don't let them fool you. All right, so I've stripped off. I put a little bit of penetrating oil on this to get those jam nuts off. There was a lot of crud on there and built up stuff. So just a little bit of penetrating oil and some wire brush to clean out from between those threads. Much better. So I've got my Heim joints back on, and this thing sits flat under the tractor. These offsets, in it, they sit flat. So that's how I have it in the vise. So you're gonna want these things facing straight up and down basically. And I've got them where I think they need to be, center to center. I'm looking at 22 and 13/16. Right on the money. Now what I need to do is tighten up the jam nut while keeping this thing straight. And we'll move on to the drag link. And this is 3/4, by the way. The flats on these Heims are 3/4 and this jam nut is 3/4. All right, we got our Heim joints in. Here's what I got for I put a 1/2 inch grade 8 bolt through it with a lock washer and a lock washer on each side with a jam nut, because you want this thing to have articulation. And if you just put the head of the bolt up against it, it limits that quite a bit. So that gives it more articulation. I'm just test fitting this right now. So I'm using regular nuts because I want to make sure it's going to work. So I got the Heim joints and everything bolted on, and if you come in here and check this out, I've got my steering works, everything's fine, but if you come in here and look at this, what I've had to do here is put lock washers underneath the head of the bolt, and I've had to put one in between the nut and the Heim joint. And that's just because without those, it can't flex because it just hits the bolt. Now, what I'm gonna do is make my own little custom spacers for that. I've got some 1/2 inch rod coupling over there, and I'm just gonna grind it down until it's round. It doesn't have any hex left on it, and it'll take the place of those lock washers so I can get a little spacer. Now, in hindsight, I wish I would have just gotten some heavy duty ball joint studs instead, but I didn't. I thought that this being a flat surface would just let me use a Heim joint, but there's a lot more twist involved in it than it looks by eye when you're looking at it. So I'm gonna make some custom pieces to make this work. How I'm gonna do this, I've got my rod coupling in the drill, and once this is ground down till it's significantly thinner, I'll take it out of here and I'll just be able to cut slivers out of it, if you will, to make little spacers. Got my rod coupling all ground down, and what I need to do now is take it off of this rod, and I need to drill it out so that it doesn't have threads, or at least I need a couple spacers that don't have threads that are going to go up on this side of under the head of the bolt, and then this side can have threads. That'll be fine, but I got to get it off and do that first. here's my spacers, and as you can see, I now have the full articulation of the joint. There's a spacer on each side. Now, I'm going to put it back in the tractor, but first, I need to give that a little bit of paint or something so they don't rust out, but we're gonna put this back in the tractor and use lock nuts, see how it works. Well, everything's all bolted up tight. Those spacers I made worked out pretty good. Everything works as it should. We've got articulation, and the steering feels so much crisper. And I haven't gotten on the ground yet, but it goes lock to lock. So the next thing we're gonna do, we need to fit the wheels back on, get some spacers on those, some machine bushings, and we're gonna take this thing outside and test drive it. Back down on the ground with this thing, and I had to take the tie rod and the wheels off several times to get the alignment close. I wanted it to be a little bit towed in, but when I first put it back together, it was way towed out. Then I overcompensated by threading the ends way out, or 2 turns each actually, and that made it way towed in. So I took them back apart, unscrewed it one 360 on each side, and now it's just slightly towed in. So we're gonna take this thing outside and see how much better it. That's gonna do it for the video. This thing definitely feels a lot better, a lot more responsive. I don't know about stronger, but them old ball joints used to move independent of each other. They had slop in them. And now these Heim joints have 0. And I think I got the alignment right because I can go down the road at full speed and I can let go of the wheel and that thing just goes straight. It tracks straight. So I think that's a win for this thing. In the future, I am absolutely going to build a custom front axle for this thing because there's so much slop everywhere else, and even in the gearbox. So I'm going to go rack and pinion custom axle, but for now this is going to get me through Good Evening Ranch and whatever else I do until I build the axle. I don't think that's coming apart. If you're new to the channel, please like, comment, subscribe. Once again, I'm Jason. This is Tennessee Mountain Homestead, and I'll see you on the next one.